Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Once a DJ. If you'd like to support the show, then head to onceadj.com/support to find out how you can help. If you'd like to get in touch with any feedback or suggestions, email onceadjpodcast@gmail.com. Once a DJ is produced by the good people at Remote Control. If you'd like to find out more about working with them, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk. Time for the show. So let's go. I'm here today with DJ Woody, and I'm just looking through his press release one sheet, which just reminds me of all the insane things he's done. And being one of Mixmaster Mike's favourite DJs is pretty much all you need to know in terms of my world. So I'm going to try not to get a bit too obsessed with when I first saw your footage and things like that, and asking weird questions from 20 years ago that it's insignificant to you, but to me it's like some massive thing. Lee Woodvine, aka DJ Woody, thanks for coming on today, and how are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Absolute pleasure. I've been really enjoying listening to the previous episodes of this, so it's nice to sit down and have a chat.
Brilliant, appreciate that. So let's kick it off then, as per usual, with how did you get into DJing?
Basically through the explosion of hip-hop and finally figuring out what my calling within that was, I was, I'd say, the second generation of sort of UK hip-hop, but I was around when it first kind of exploded. So I call it sort of older brother syndrome, where, you've got an older brother and you get exposed to maybe certain things that people in your immediate peer group don't necessarily get exposed to. But I was lucky enough that living in the area that I did within Burnley and the school that I went to, there was a few people who were wicked at breaking. In my area, I saw graffiti pretty much as soon as it came to the UK on the walls, and it was super exciting time, sort of mid 80s. I'd have been like, 8 in 84, 85.
So was it in Burnley particularly early by the standards of the UK then, do you mean?
No, I'd say it hit the UK just like BMX hit the UK, just like skateboarding at various times hit the UK. It was a youth phenomenon, you know what I mean? Like Malcolm McLaren and everything that came over, it was imported at the same sort of time. But the particular area that I grew up, there was some activity there, So there were two schools in my area where I grew up, and it was the other school that a lot of the breakers went to. And then it must have been about 1985 or something like that. Their roof fell in, and we ended up getting a bunch of their pupils. Like, they were scattered among the other primary schools in Burnley, and we got a few, and a couple of them just happened to be like the nastiest little young b-boys going in the area. So got exposed to all that at school disco, and it was just all massively exciting. And luckily my older brother's best mate, or one of his best mates, was the guy who could do a windmill, the guy who could do nice floats and had all the tapes that you could tape to tape. And you just kind of get exposed to it. Next thing you know, you're nicking VW badges off the front of cars. And
God, your school discos sound a lot better than mine. We used to just dress up as Michael Jackson and drink Calippos.
Oh, well, there was that as well, but bit Shakin' Stevens. But so the obsession started in the 80s as a kid. Tried my hand at rapping, but I think I'm way too shy for that business. Had a little group. I made my mate, who was into heavy metal, memorise a whole bunch of Run DMC lyrics, and we used to go around the yard doing that. And then we started a little group called the Psychic Boys. I remember going down to his house with a Casio keyboard and writing raps to that when I must have been about 8 or something.
That's not a bad name for an 8-year-old's rap group, to be fair.
The Psychic Boy. Well, There's a long story that you honestly don't want to hear, where I was convinced I was psychic when I was that age, like for real. And I'm still kind of freaked out by this story, but yeah. So that's where that came from. But it was literally went down his house, had a blank pad and a pen, and at that point I'd never heard an English person rap. You know, it was before I discovered any UK rap. So I'm literally thinking, now what does a white lad from Burnley rap about? You know what I mean? And yeah, and I don't know, yeah, just formative experience. You know, trying to make beats off tape to tapes and stuff, and all that jazz that everybody else ended up doing in the 80s.
So from there then, were you quite early getting decks?
Fairly. So yeah, a lot of it was sort of monetarily led, you know. Yeah, I literally couldn't get the money together for decks until I kind of got a part-time job when I was a teenager, and then like a birthday and a Christmas combined, I got decks for Christmas when I was 15. Pair of belt drives, cheapest ones you can find, sort of all in sort of set at the back of DJ Mag, and yeah, away we went. And I think it took another year to save up for one Technics, another year to save up for another Technics, and another year to save up for a good mixer, but got there in the end.
So how long had you been kind of thirsting for decks?
From the late 80s, really. I was buying a lot of the Def Jam 7s, all that sort of Run DMC, Public Enemy, LL Cool J, Eric B. and Rakim. It was all available cheap as chips at Woolies. Do you know what I mean? It was like a couple of quid. So, you know, sort of limited funds again. You know, I got the albums on cassette, and I got as many singles as I could on 7-inch. So I used to mess around on my little MIDI hi-fi at home with sort of makeshift paper, slip mats, and do little routines with beats to the rhyme, which is basically a scratch record anyway, with all the samples on it. So yeah, I was faffing about ruining records from sort of, I don't know, 86, 87, 88. But yeah, to actually finally get decks, it was like end of 92.
So were you thinking about how, because obviously with beat juggling, I think a lot of beat juggling, you've got to think in a certain way with it. It's almost like you've got to think spatially about music. So when you were mucking about like that, doing sort of pause tapes and that type of thing, were you thinking a lot about how music, like deconstructing it?
Yeah, trying to, because I mean, although my mum sort of mainly listened to Motown records and stuff like that, being of her generation up north, I was pretty ignorant to a lot of the sample sources until sort of after really trying to deconstruct sort of Public Enemy records. You know, you're sort of you're listening to these records. Obviously, Public Enemy in particular was so dense with samples. I didn't realize how much of a record they were taking. Are they just taking that tiny little horn stab, or is the bass and the horn linked? Or, you know, so it was a revelation when I started hearing the original sources, you know, a couple of years later or whatever. So yeah, it's just that sort of DIY thing, isn't it? You know, you're trying to imagine what's going on, because obviously there's nobody explaining it to you. Although I had my older brother who was also into rap and stuff, and his mate who was into hip hop, I didn't know anybody who was actively trying to do hip hop really, apart from when people were trying to break and stuff. But I was kind of, when people started veering away from it, we all started skateboarding at the same time as well. And slowly, a lot of people who I got into it with were sort of less interested. I was still kind of like, well, I'm still writing these little raps that nobody knows about, and I really want a set of decks, and, you know, it still had my full attention.
So when you got your decks then, what was the kind of developmental curve like? Did you just pick everything up quite quickly because of how you'd been thinking about it, or was it, you know, how hard was that learning?
Obviously, this is all pre any kind of instructional videos or any of that business. So it was literally listening to the records that you like the scratching on. There might be the odd thing that I'd taped off TV that had a tiny bit of DJing in, you know, a Public Enemy concert with Terminator X in the background, or Run DMC video where Jam Master Jace, is doing something. Literally just picking it up where you could. I was quite fortunate in the fact that when my brother went to college, the first thing he said to me when he came back from his first day is, "You'll never believe this, Lee, but there's a lad in my class who's exactly the same as you." And he brought home this folder. I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And he showed me this folder, and each person in the class had to write stuff about themselves. So it's like, what are you into? Who's your most influential person? And this guy was like, hip hop and rap. Most influential, Chuck D. And all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to meet this guy. This is after everybody had kind of sort of left hip hop,
Yeah.
And he's like, and he's a DJ, And I'm like, what? So pretty soon after, we sort of took a bus up to his little village and got there, and it was like, I couldn't believe my luck. Do you know what I mean? It was like, went up to his attic, and it was like it was just wall to wall hip hop, sort of, and he was into exactly the same sort of rap as me. Like by this point, I'd fully immersed myself in hardcore UK hip hop, your Hard Noise, Son of Noise, Blade,
Yeah.
MC Mello and all this lot. So it was like a niche within a niche. Hip hop wasn't big then, and we were into the grimiest, most underground stuff going. And we just happened to live down the road from each other. So from that point, it was like automatic crew. Like we were literally the only people in the area into the same thing, doing the same thing with the same sort of vision. So developmentally, it was a case of getting up to that attic as often as I could, So I'm talking about a guy called Chris Hargreaves, who went under the name Mr. Tickle. He is 2 years older than me, but he also had a mentor, sort of friend, Rick Alton, who went under Filthy Rich, who was a few years older than him. So Rich was original sort of, hip-hop generation. He was like 5 or 6 years older than me, and he was like Bon Oldswick's Mixmaster Mike, sort of proper left field creative on the decks, doing moves you wouldn't even think of trying.
Yeah.
So just learning from jamming with those guys, really. I would ask for tips on stuff, but to be honest with you, and he wasn't being selfish at all, like in the way he put it, but he was like, just sort of experiment, and figure your own style out, and that's the way it went, and we all ended up having completely different styles. We'd all figured scratches out in our own sort of, by our own steam, and did them in a different way, which gave them a different sound.
I think that for me, what I like about people like you, Mixmaster Mike, Kid Koala, there's others, I think you guys all look at the turntable in a very different way to most of us. So that's cool that it came through that sort of route, because it's a really unique talent and gift.
I think some of the individuality comes from kind of not necessarily an outsider mentality, but not necessarily being surrounded by peers and immersed in. You're in your own little bubble, you are, I guess, part of a wider scene, but there's nothing like the internet to sort of have any grasp on that. Do you know what I mean? You're just developing your skills within this art form you love, and it was so kind of open for interpretation at that point. You're talking about what we're talking early 90s, early to mid 90s, this kind of developmental time, and it's when the Rocksteady crew DJs are first sort of dropping on the scene. You're first seeing the Scratch Pickles do things with multiple DJs and multiple decks, creating bands, and we were all heavily influenced off DJ Supreme and the UK DJs.
Yeah.
But as well, Mixmaster Mike and, well, everything we could get hold of, Space Travelers, DJ Quest, all these guys, all these tapes, all these bits of videos, turntable TV that was coming through. we were like, that's just us, but we're in Burnley and Barnoldswick. Do you know what I mean? That's like, that's what we're doing.
How easy was it to get hold of that stuff?
It was fine. I mean, Burnley's 25 miles from Manchester. All of my youth, the bus fare was like £1 or £1.99. So whether I was going over to skate there every Saturday with all the skaters, bobbing in the record shops as well. From the age of, say, 12, 13, I can't believe my parents let me do it, but like I was over there on a bus, in the record shops in Manchester, in the skate shops.
Without wanting to sound 600 years old then, I do think it was a bit different back then. The amount of freedom that kids are afforded now is just totally different.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got a 14-year-old daughter now, and there's no chance she's going to Manchester on her own. Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I got in some skirmishes, I've had people try and mug me with a knife when I was 13, and, you're sort of getting chased by security guards on your skateboards around Manchester or whatever. I wouldn't I'd hate to sort of imagine my kids having those experiences.
Yeah, I think that's just part of parenting, isn't it? So when did you become aware of battling and think, I want to pursue this?
So I think my first battle video that I got was, is it 89 when Swifty won it? That was the first 89 DMC World. That was the first video I got my hands on. Probably cost me about £30 from Basement DJ Supplies in Manchester.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was aware of battling before then, but it was just kind of pictures in Hip Hop Connection or, like whatever you'd heard. But absolutely loved it. I mean, I just thought culturally, I thought, yeah, well, that's what I do. I want to be a hip hop scratch DJ. At some point, I'm going to battle. But I wanted to do all of it. One thing I didn't mention, it was probably largely Jam Master Jay, the reason I wanted to get on turntables and do this thing. And a large part of that was to be the DJ in a rap group, to perform as the DJ in a rap group. But I loved all aspects of it, so I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to be able to DJ in a club and mix it up. I wanted to do scratches on a rap record. And then when more musical kind of endeavours were coming out, I wanted to sort of do that kind of thing.
So what order did it come? Did you start DJing out first, or did you start doing sort of battle routines?
I hid away and practiced for the first couple of years, and then I was really trying to get good at scratching and beat matching and all of it. But then around 95, I got offered a couple of DJ sets. So I was DJing, doing bits and bobs doing that. Then I went to uni around that time, 95.
Where'd you go?
Well, it was Stockport College, which had a really good graphic design course, basically. Yeah. And it was a really cool, sort of open-minded, sort of almost fine art kind of graphic design course. So you could pretty much do what you wanted with it, which was dead cool. And most of the people in there were musicians as well. There's a whole bunch of sort of notable Mancunian names that came out of there. But doing bits of student dues over there. One of the guys who did some of the college dues was Andy Votel of Finders Keepers and Twisted Nerve. So that camp pretty much came out of Stockport College. So when we finished there, we started a night in Manchester at Night and Day called Pork Scratching. And sort of a funny name for a now vegan, but it was Pork Scratching. And that was with a guy called Gareth Mallingson, who is Sir Conical, who was one of the first artists on Votel's Twisted Nerve records before Badly Drawn Boy and all that lot.
Right.
And the idea of that was we'd play sort of music we were interested in, kind of across the board, from weird underground hip-hop to electronica and stuff at the beginning of the night. And then at some point in the night, our drummer Carl Sharrocks, who I went on to do the live stuff later on in my career with, and brilliant drummer, he was on the drums. Gary was on the contrabass. Gareth sort of had a sampler and he was doing weird stuff with the sampler, but the lead was the turntables. So we'd kind of start off with samples from the turntables and the rest of the band would jam it out, and we'd go on mad freestyle adventures for the next 2 hours. So it was proper art school stuff, and like the crowd ate it up. And at times it was mental, like sonically mental. But such a formative experience for me, figuring out how to work with musicians and how to interact with musicians and even how to work with different time signatures. And yeah, it was proper freeform turntable jazz, really. That was pre all the battling and all that lot. That was about 1997. And that kind of ran its course. And at the same time, my best mate, who we had sort of a rap crew with, he was another sort of amazing sort of meet at college a few years earlier, you know. The one other person who kind of looks like is into hip hop. Like, we spent a week sort of dissing each other behind each other's backs, thinking that we were into the worst kind of rap music. And then, first conversation was, you into rap then? You into hip hop? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, what are you into then? And he was expecting me to say like something pants. And I'm like, yeah, Blade. And he was like, what? And turns out this guy, Dave Trevelyan, MC Tigger, was also into exactly the same kind of stuff as me. So we formed a little rap group, Just Mental. Anyway, come 98, at the end of this pork scratching, we went to Fresh 98. And we all kind of, we were just getting somewhere with stuff, you know. I was getting to the point where I thought, all right, skills getting sharper, having the experience performing in Manchester and having a few people tell me I was getting decent or whatever. It was kind of time to show and prove and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we all went to Fresh 98 with this mission, you know, to go in there as a bunch of kids from the sticks and, you know, show some skills. So I did that on the open turntables. I think I was the first one that jumped up. The Scratch Perverts were hosting open turntables in the basement. And my mate Tigger also did it in the rap ciphers, you know, got on stage and, you know, we a whole bunch, like all Mud family were there and everybody, and, you know, like so many people were there. We were chatting to Keller before Keller was Keller in the queue and chilling with the 360 physicals and all this kind of generation of hip hop heads coming up, trying to show the skills. We came back from that, and Tigger had decided that didn't fill the void that he wanted hip hop to fill, basically, and gave everything up. Do you want to buy my records? I'm giving up hip hop. It didn't fill that thing for him, and he found Islam. Basically, he got super into Islam, and so very long story short. From that point, I was like, oh, well, what do I do? I thought we were in a rap crew. Now we don't have a rapper. So I was kind of thinking what to pursue. So the next thing was battling. You know, I was doing this freestyle night, this avant-garde kind of freestyle scratch jazz thing. But the guys who were getting all the props in Manchester were the guys who were battling. So we're talking DJ Mark 1. He'd won the Northern DMC heat a bunch of times. And then 98, the man who was dominating the Northern battle scene was Peter Parker, who went on to do Finger Thing. So with now no rapper to pursue our UK rap dreams, I was like, right, okay, well, the thing that I've got to do is beat Peter Parker. So so I signed myself up for the 99 Manchester DMC heat. And as it turned out, Dan Peter Parker didn't even enter that one. So I had to swap all these Peter Parker disses I got sorted. I had to swap them all out last minute. But that kind of started the ball rolling on the battle thing. But I had it in my head that I'd need to practice for at least 7 years before I started battling. And actually thinking about it, it was 7 years after I got the first proper turntable. So Yeah, so 99, and then, it kind of bit of a snowball effect from there, really.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying One to DJ. I wanted to create a product for the listeners to be able to support the show, and for the guests as a token of gratitude for being on. So I've teamed up with Sure Shot Shop to create some One to DJ 45 RPM adapter clamps. These are my weapon of choice as a 45 adapter, as they add stability and grip to aid you in any setup. These are available for £25 each plus flat fee postage from onetodj.bigcartel.com. And if you'd like to see the other models you can buy and also customise, check out sureshotshop.com. If you're an avid collector of timeless music on vinyl, but don't have the budget to fork out for those pricey originals, then look no further than Be With Records. From library music to yacht rock, jazz, hip-hop, disco and beyond, Be With lovingly reissue some of the coolest classics. All of their records are carefully remastered and cut to the highest standards to make sure the pressings are of peak audio quality and do justice to the music being released. And something else to note is that they don't do limited runs to drive up resale and hype. If the demand is there, they'll repress, as the focus is the music, not the profit margin. They have flat rate shipping and free UK shipping on orders over £60. And if you head to bewithrecords.com and use the discount code ONCEADJ, all one word, you'll get 10% off your order. So head to bewithrecords.com and level up those crates today. So just aside from having to change the samples, because I remember at DJs for Life, and this is me going back into things, so for anyone listening, DJs for Life was this amazing event that was put on in Birmingham in around, I guess, 2006. And there was seminars with loads of different amazing turntablists and DJs. And I remember seeing you in one, and you were talking about your level of hunger when you were battling and just saying whoever it was, you just like wanted to eat their kids or whatever.
Not quite as hardcore, but yeah.
So, I'm not sure it wasn't anything too far off from that. It was this real kind of focus. So were you kind of deflated at all when you realised that he wasn't entering because he'd been that kind of goalpost for you?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, I had pictures of Dan in my room. I wasn't sort of, it was more about just that kind of rite of passage in the hip hop sort of culture, really. It was more about getting props in the local scene. I wanted at some point to elevate to be sort of nationally sort of a standard, but at that point, really, it was like, I want to be known as the best DJ in the North, the best scratch DJ in Manchester. That was my goal. And I ended up getting second that night. DJ Uppercut from York pulled a doozy out of the bag. Everything went well on my front. Well, it was disastrous in the day because it was like the hottest day of the year in Planet K in Manchester. And this is a time in the UK DMCs when 40 or 50 DJs would turn up to one heat, and it'd be a different 40 or 50 DJs turn up to a different heat. There was a lot of DJs entering.
Yeah.
So Swifty, Cutmaster Swift, he had to judge all the eliminations. So we'd have like 40 or 50 DJs have to do like 1 minute in front of him or something, or 90 seconds in front of him. Then he'd have to figure out who on earth he'd put through for the last 8 or 10 in the evening. So obviously me having it in my head that like I was a contender for the overall thing, obviously getting through to the final was crucial. Otherwise I wasn't even in the running, So I thought, right, I'll go in strong. I'll do this part of the set. Got in there. It was like sweltering for Manchester. And it was hot enough to melt all of my sticker markers on the records. So I like it came to crunch point. Swifty puts his timer on. I'm all set to go. Realised all my stickers have moved, and like the little lock groove juggle thing I've got going on or whatever it was, wasn't locking, and this wasn't starting at the right place, and this sticker was knocking that bit off. And so sort of 20 seconds in, I'm like, I'm going to have to stop. Everything's, and so he's like, no, the clock's ticking, carry on. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So I just had to drag a beat out of the bag and just cut like a lunatic for the following like 50 seconds. And somehow that got me through. But yeah, Uppercut on the night, I had no issues with the set on the night. I wasn't sure if my nervous energy had mucked me up or sort of helped me, but as it turned out, somehow I sort of turned the nervous energy sort of into aggression. That's probably what I was talking about at the DJ event. And somehow I managed to flip it, the nervousness. And yeah, the attitude was, right, everybody's going to die, and it was wicked, got really good response. But yeah, Uppercut timed it absolutely perfectly. He had it was the week that they were re-releasing the Star Wars films, Like, I think it was the first remake when they'd done the CGI in it or whatever it was. And he did the Emperor's March theme with a tone, and it just absolutely crushed it. Everybody's like, whoa. And so he won on the night. But as second place, I got through to the final. So I was like, oh my God, I'm in the London final. It's going to be on a video. So from that point, all of a sudden, your sort of vision gets a bit wider, and you're just like, well, I need to represent myself on a decent level here. If I want to compete with the scratch perverts who were dominating, obviously, they were people I was looking at, watching the videos like, God, if I ever get there, I've got to get to that level,
Yeah.
So from that point on, it's like, you know what, I need to study these guys and see what they're not seeing and fill in the gaps and, find the chinks in the armor. Do you know what I mean?
Is that a case of, rather than trying to do what they do as well as them, try and do another thing? It's almost like creating your own niche.
Absolutely. I mean, and it was such a creative time in DJing anyway. You're talking late 90s, very early 2000s. There was new stuff coming out every year. That's one of the things that I loved about going to the battles before I was battling. Each year I'd go to the Boardwalk or wherever it was in Manchester that year, and you knew you were going to see something you'd never seen before. I always remember seeing DJ XL from Wales do the twiddle for the first time. Absolutely game changer. Multiple fingers on the fader to make it twice as fast. Like, ridiculous. Nobody had done that. And then I think the first person I saw crab, it wasn't actually Cuba, it was Prime Cuts. I seen him do like crabbing, and I was like, oh my God, 3 fingers now. So the thing that excited me about scratch battles was that you didn't know what was going to happen, and there was this instrument that could create new sounds by inventing new technique. That was so exciting for me.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that era as well is music wasn't being produced in the same way with a lens on it being super clean for battling. You were kind of still using what's there readily available, and it kept the connection between being a club DJ and a turntablist. So it still had that funk.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of approached them with a different hat on, if you will, because some of the stuff I was trying on turntables, I mean, yeah, you just couldn't do in a club. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not for that, it's almost like a different target audience. I mean, for me, mentally at the time, and sometimes I took it too far, I think, I was really focused on trying to do stuff that would blow the other DJs' minds, or just show people stuff that they weren't expecting, or I really wasn't the kind of battle DJ to be like, if I do this will make the crowd go wild because it's that tune that they all know. That wasn't really my focus. I was very technically focused. I wanted it to sound good as well, but I was really focused on the skill set, on the development of technique, on the development of ideas, just trying to get ideas across, really, and kind of mad scientist style, really.
When you were practicing for battles and getting your sets together, were you kind of practicing all your body language stuff as well, and the kind of stage presence?
Yeah, not. I would do that. It was kind of an afterthought. I'll be honest. During the time I was battling, I think I was an unemployed uni graduate, basically. But then, yeah, I got my first job. I was working in Manchester, 40 plus hours a week, plus a commute. I wasn't one of those guys living off DJing, able to practice 6 or 7 hours a day. I had a very long days at work, and I had to fit the practice in where I could, whether it meant getting up at 5:30 and getting an hour or 2 in before I had to set off for work, or staying up till 2 a.m, having got in at 8 at night. Do you know what I mean? It was like fitting it in where I could. So a lot of my preparation and a lot of the ideas literally came from like a pen and a pad. I'd sit in the room, sketching out decks on a thing, looking at what parts of turntables and mixers people weren't using, And obviously, this is all when it was 2 channels and a crossfader. Maybe I'd take a little finger strengthener tool into work. Maybe I'd take an old crossfader in and practice fader moves on the crossfader. So a lot of my thinking was away from the decks.
Yeah.
When I got time on the decks, it was trying to sort of develop and explore some of the ideas that I had away from the decks. And then eventually you sort of format some of those ideas into some kind of routine. And then closer to the battle, I'm thinking, okay, I've got a little bit here that maybe I can look up at the crowd and do this. So I was trying to work that in, but I was really kind of focused on getting the routines how I wanted them to sound. There were certain routines that I did that were easier than others. Like the second ever DMC that I did, the routine was so hard. It was like really, really hard to pull off, and it was probably sounded mental. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I remember John Peel's son was into turntablism. So for a couple of years, and thankfully it was the couple of years when I was in the UK DMC, John Peel would invite the finalists or maybe the top half of the finalists or whatever it was to Maida Vale to do the sets and stuff. So after doing all this weird noise that, my parents hadn't understood, all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I'm going on John Peel, mum, So then you sort of anti-start tuning in, and it was 2000 DMC, my set. I liked my set, but it sounded bonkers. I had all these kind of ideas that I wanted to sort of pursue, but sonically, like if you couldn't see that routine, it probably didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I always remember my Auntie Jean, like seeing us like a month or two after. She's like, "Oh yeah, I listened to you on John Peel," and she tried to make it a compliment, but it was blatantly clear that I'd completely confused the sonically. Like what the hell was that?
Do you think that your kind of level of avant-garde stopped you winning the DMCs?
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest with you, I toned it down. The second year was like my slightly bonkers trying to push the envelope year. Actually, that year, the hardest set I'd ever seen done was by +1 in the sound check.
Right.
It was the year Mr. Thing won, which was an awesome set as well. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing +1 doing that year. It was 2000 in the sound check. It was unbelievable. Unfortunately, he didn't get it as clean in the actual performance on the night.
Is that when he was about 16 as well?
He was dead young, because I knew of Neil via Richie Roughtone, because we used to go up and DJ up there, and him and Brian, his dynamic duo partner, they were both like complete prodigies. Do you know what I mean? Like Neil +1 was amazing before he even had his own. Did he have his own deck? So I think first Technics he ever had, he'd won him in Scotland for DMC. Do you know what I mean? Just one of those,
right.
It was sort of one of those kind of stories like, what, you've been DJing for 2 years? Like, how is this possible? Do you know what I mean? It was the same when I first chatted to Tiger Stars, actually. He told me how long he'd been DJing. I couldn't believe it, like how good he was for that. Kind of ridiculous. But so going back to, do I think my sort of emphasis on technique impede me from winning DMC? You never know. Like, I thought the best DMC set I ever did was actually 2001, the year that +1 won it. Start to finish, I was happy with that. Like, there was different ideas going throughout. I think it all sounded good. +1 set was amazing. As like, I've no issue sort of not winning in a battle like that. The year after, I'd already won the world ITF with the same sets that I was going to the UK DMC with. I ended up winning the world ITF. So at that point, I'm getting offered more DJ gigs. I'm traveling around a lot, and so I wasn't as focused on the DMC the year after anyway. So I don't think it was a stronger set in 2002. But at the end of the day, it's all subjective, and it depends who you've got on that judging panel. It depends what's going on in their heads. It's not for me as a participant in it to really say why, who won what years. You could all you can do is go and represent yourself to the best and see what happens. Do you know what I mean? But certainly from a technical standpoint, when I was at the point that I was good enough to win it, I don't think it was the technical stuff that stopped me from. It was just the way the cards were dealt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think as soon as I asked that question, I realised it sounded a bit loaded anyway.
No, but I understand the question, because at the time there was very much this sort of conversation between technical and funky, and all this stuff. And I never saw it as a this or that. Do you know what I mean? Like, my pursuit of technicality was a pursuit of musicianship. Do you know what I mean? So the way a musician wants to develop his technique in order to enhance what he can do with that instrument. Do you know what I mean? So it was never, it's musical or it's technical. No, the pursuit of technical excellence was the pursuit of musical excellence.
Yeah. Which ITF, was it a category that you won in the ITF, or was it the all-around?
It was, the all-around. So, they called it the advancement. So that was the kind of 90-second versus 90-second kind of old school music seminar knockout kind of thing. So you go round for round, and then if you win that battle, you go to the next round. And
Did you have to qualify in the UK for that, or was it invitational? Or
I had to win the UK ITF to get to the Worlds.
And then was it the Vestax Invitationals after that?
No, the Vestax also had a UK final. So that was Fabric, I think, was the UK final for that. So in 2001, I won the UK ITF and the UK Vestax competitions, and that qualified me to the World ITF and the World Vestax the same year. Just so happened that they were a week apart. So the first weekend I was in LA for the World Vestax Extravaganza, as it was called. So I was repping the UK for that one weekend. And then I had a week to kind of mooch about and explore LA and San Francisco, because the ITF was the following weekend in San Francisco. So I had sort of, a nice little sort of 10 days in the States, battling my heart out.
So let me just ask you about Vestax then. So Technics and Vestax, for anyone who doesn't know, were the main turntable manufacturers for battle DJs way back when. So the two companies have very, very different performing turntables, I would say. Maybe not very different. They have like slightly different performing turntables with different mechanical attributes and things like that. Different pitch faders on them and all this sort of thing. So when you would have been battling on Technics and learning the techniques, you're effectively learning how to play a Stratocaster guitar, for example. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like, you're going to go in this battle of the bands, but you're going to have to start playing a Gibson instead, but maybe a bit more abstract than that. Your strings are going to be tuned differently or whatever. So how long, when you did the Vestax competitions, how long did you have to work with a Vestax turntable? Because you did some pretty crazy shit when you use them. Some of the most innovative stuff I would say I've seen on a turntable.
Oh, cheers, dude. It was a revelation when I first got Vestax turntables. The amazing thing about the Vestax was, for me, whereas say, the Drunken Trumpet routine by Kid Koala, so that kind of drunkenness, I guess, is sort of, I can't remember what he actually does technically in that, but if you're manipulating a pitch fader on the Technics, it's going to sound kind of whirry because it's catching up with your movement. There's a lag between you moving that fader and that pitch changing up. The first thing I noticed with the with the Vestax PDX 2000 was that, like, it moves straight away. Wow, do you know what I mean? Like, if I want to go, it's going to do that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not waiting. So all of a sudden, your sort of pitch manipulation is more accurate. Add to that, on the fader, you've got plus or minus 10, but add to that, you've got ultra pitch, which gives you plus or minus 50. So all of a sudden, you got access to so much more range as far as pitch is
Yeah.
concerned. So I kind of took that as a cue to really sort of explore melody, because obviously being for years restricted by 33, 45 and plus or minus 8. So it's a new thing to master. It's a new, even trying to get accurate moving this tiny little ultra pitch fader that was an additional fader on the turntable. Trying to manipulate that accurately so you could get to the pitch that you wanted, so it'd sound like the tune you wanted to create. Even having the reverse button on there, all of a sudden, I can stick stuff in reverse instantly and play around with this sample going backwards, like accurately, So, that was super exciting for me creatively. Fair enough, you couldn't necessarily turn up to a club and do that, without taking that particular turntable. But this was about making music with a turntable, and all of a sudden, like you say, we've been given a better instrument. So I just really tried to sort of push that as much as I could. So,
but even from like a mechanical point of view as well, when you realise that you can take the tone arm away from the turntable, and when you do that juggle with 2 tone arms on the same record, I think my head exploded.
Well, I think my head exploded when I realised that you could do that and nobody else had noticed that you could do that. Because I was like when I first got those turntables home, I was literally like, right, what can I do? What can these do? And I noticed that the turntables like moved away from the tone arm moved away from the turntable. I'm like, honestly, my first thought that popped in my head was, how have none of the scratch perverts noticed this? and then I moved the other turntable next to it, and I'm like, I've got 2 tone arms on one turntable here. What can I do with this? I'm like, well, if I wire the mixer this way, I can just move one record and manipulate 2 different instruments simultaneously.
Yeah.
Oh man, let's go to town on this one. So just kind of just exploring, just like so much fun. Do you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you can do new stuff.
Yeah, and that's proper like mad scientist sort of business. So I know I was going to try not to be really granular, but then the other routine, which is probably a slight different sway on how you're using the equipment and stuff and how you're approaching creativity, is your Ugly Duckling Little Samba one. Because I think with that, what's amazing with that is, I don't know that's effectively, I think, probably a jazz mode musical scale. I wouldn't know which one because I don't know much about jazz. But I'm guessing that you didn't put that together thinking, I'm going to do a Phrygian or a Mixolydian or whatever it is. But you've just kind of gone with something and experimented and found something that sounds amazing, and creating without that bit of music, because I think a bit of musical theory can be a bad thing because it can maybe stop you experimenting. So it was really interesting that you did something it's almost like an Egyptian sort of scale, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I come from zero musical education or knowledge. Like I say, my mum was into music and stuff, but I've got, in the family, there's nobody that plays an instrument. But oddly, we had like a piano in the house, and then I think they flogged or give it away. It was like one of those old sort of ones that a vicar would have, you know what I mean, like those school pianos.
Yeah.
And what I do have, I think, is a pretty decent ear for when things are in and out of tune, basically. So, just DIY, just sort of give it a go and see what you can do. Do you know what I mean? Just so that's probably the one that comes to mind for most people, because it's something you can whistle. It's something you can sing along to. People can sing that back to me. It's pretty mad.
It's really expressive as well, though, because you've got the dynamics in it as well, which is the sort of nuance a lot of turntablists might not think about when they're trying to do sort of a melodic scratch routine.
I was just trying to make something that sounded good, and it was probably the quickest routine I ever put together, I think, from sticking the sample on and putting it together with the Ugly Duckling beat that I was using. It probably took me an hour to come up with those melodies or something like that. It's often the case. So the stuff that's meant to be kind of just works, you know.
Yeah. I think one of the things just to mention about Just a Little Samba as well, not only is it a great beat, but I realised recently how well Ugly Duckling stuff is arranged.
Right, okay, yeah.
Because they have proper bridges and stuff. Because that's why I think Pete Rock's my favourite producer. Well, that's why Pete Rock is my favourite producer. Because of the way he arranges and puts bridges in, he creates songs rather than beats. And I've just realised that Ugly Duckling has that same sort of thing.
And that was all Young Einstein, right? He
did
all the production for that. Yeah.
Another person, I'm trying to get him on as well.
Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah. So that week in LA and San Francisco, did you win both of those battles?
No, so the first battle was the Vestax battle in LA. And to be honest with you, I did my set super clean, but yeah, nobody knew who the hell I was. And basically, I believe I came fourth, like when they totted up the points. Boogie Blind won that, and I think did Rocky Rock come second or something? So yeah, I kind of relaxed after that point. So that week in between Vestax and ITF, I kind of hardly practiced. I was just like doing the tourist thing in between and just hanging out with a bunch of people. Ended up meeting D Styles at the Vestax competition, and he said, like, if you're down in San Francisco next week, give us a shout or whatever. So I ended up sort of going to his place and having a jam and nice. Just sort of just hooking up with a bunch of cool people while I was out there. And so for the ITF I was a bit more chilled but less practiced, and that was the one that kind of became quite surreal when, like, going through the rounds, all of a sudden you realise you're in a boxing ring, like looking at another DJ, and there's one DJ sort of in the way of a world title, you know. So yeah, it was the world ITF the following weekend, and that's the one I won. So it wasn't till the following year that I ended up winning the World Vestax, and that was the one that I did the Just a Little Samba routine in.
Yeah.
So.
And was that the last battle that you did?
Yeah, I was kind of like, I mean, I couldn't, not that I, I'd studied everybody to the point that I knew I could compete with these people. Do you know what I mean? I never expected to win a world title, but once it got to that point, I kind of didn't see the point in carrying on, to be fair. Like, I mean, I'd kind of got that thing out of my system, really.
That's kind of growth mindset sometimes, isn't it? Kind of, if you've learned all that you can and developed as much as you can, what's the next challenge?
Yeah, and that was it. And by that point, I was getting offered sort of tours and stuff like that, and to work with different people. So that seemed like the logical thing to do, really. And it's so time consuming. You're so focused, like, your entire year's focused on like 6 minutes, and I didn't have that aspiration anymore. I got to the other side of that. So,
hey guys, I hope you're enjoying One to DJ. I wanted to create a product for the listeners to be able to support the show, and for the guests as a token of gratitude for being on. So I've teamed up with Sure Shot Shop to create some One to DJ 45 RPM adapter clamps. These are my weapon of choice as a 45 adapter, as they add stability and grip to aid you in any setup. These are available for £25 each plus flat fee postage from onetodj.bigcartel.com. And if you'd like to see the other models you can buy and also customise, check out sureshotshop.com. If you're an avid collector of timeless music on vinyl but don't have the budget to fork out for those pricey originals, then look no further than Be With Records. From library music to yacht rock, jazz, hip-hop, disco and beyond, Be With lovingly reissue some of the coolest classics. All of their records are carefully remastered and cut to the highest standards to make sure the pressings are of peak audio quality and do justice to the music being released. And something else to note is that they don't do limited runs to drive up resale and hype. If the demand is there, they'll repress, as the focus is the music, not the profit margin. They have flat rate shipping and free UK shipping on orders over £60. And if you head to bewithrecords.com, and use the discount code ONCEADJ, all one word. You'll get 10% off your order. So head to bewithrecords.com and level up those crates today. Yeah. Were you ever, or have you ever been tempted to go back into battling?
I've not. People ask me that because obviously the big one that I didn't win was World DMC, and obviously that's the kind of one that we sort of grow up kind of wanting to do. But like, no, it's got no pull to actually to go for that anymore. I mean, it's been really nice, to be fair. Even though I never actually won that competition, the people there have always been so cool with me, and I've pretty much judged, so many of their competitions ever since, and I kind of take it as a privileged position for them, even though I'm not a former DMC champion, like a national or a world DMC champion. I'm so honoured to have been asked to do various showcases for him in the past. That's like, I feel as privileged to do that as to go and rep in the competitions again. It's like one of my sort of proudest kind of moments was going there, performing my own music with Carl drumming and my friend Christian Madden on the keys, performing my own music. Getting to go to the world finals and showcase music there. It's like,
yeah, I'd love to see people's reactions though. If you did, I think you're probably one of the, say, like top 5 people that if they were like, right, I'm getting back into battling, people would be like, oh Jesus, what am I going to do now? What's the point?
Well, the only thing about that is, like, I know what I'm like. I'd have to kind of fully go all in and, like, I mean, psychologically, it'd be quite punishing, really, because when you're coming from a 20-plus year career in turntablism, there'd be so much pressure applied. Do you know what I mean? Like, basically, unless you win, you've lost. Like, you're fully lost. Do you know what I mean? So you're not coming as some underdog from East Lancashire who nobody knows, which is an awesome place to be, because nobody expects some kid from the north to come down and beat them. So if you do that, you're on top of the world. But once, coming from, he's a former this or that or the other, and he's done this and that. It's a no-win situation, really.
So when you were doing the battles, doing the worlds and stuff like that, were you still doing the full-time job?
Yeah, I didn't quit the job until maybe 6 months after the second world title, something like that. I was working at Granada for the entirety of the battling period, really, which was like crazy short, to be honest. It was like 1999 to 2002. I sort of hung up the battle headphones, and then there was opportunities that arose subsequently after those wins that gave me enough confidence to at least give the full-time hip-hopper sort of dream a bash, even if it was just a 6-month bash. I took the deep dive, and 20 odd years later I'm still doing it. But
so if we get into that, then what was the first sort of key opportunity that came your way after the Worlds?
Well, I was getting offered more bookings sort of around the country and stuff like that, and starting to be asked to do showcases at different battles around Europe and whatnot. But the kind of straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, was I got offered to tour the US on the Super Rapping Tour, which was basically 3 turntablists, myself, DJ Petrix, DJ Dopey from Canada, and 3 rap acts. So it was D-Claim and J Sands from Lone Catalyst and Loot Pack, which is obviously Madlib, Wild Child, and DJ Rome's. So, I mean, for me, sort of touring, going around the States in a van with like a bunch of, absolute hip-hop dons, quite appealed. So looking at the holiday sort of entitlement that I had left at Granada, I had like 2 weeks of holiday, and this was going to be longer than that. I was like, you know what? I've got bill money for the next 6 months. I can pay my bills. I know that. Let's just do it. You're only young ones. I went for it. Took the leap.
So what was it like on that tour then? Did you manage to kind of not fanboy out or anything like that? Because you're like a pretty humble guy. Did you manage were you like relaxed with it, or were you just like, what am I doing here?
I quite like this analogy because it really felt like this sometimes. But obviously, you're hearing everybody speak all day. It wasn't my first time in the States, but it was my first time having prolonged time in the States. And all day, obviously, you're doing hip hop shows. You're in a van. You're listening to hip hop. You're sort of chatting to everybody about music and everything. But you're hearing LA accents for the most part all day, and then you pipe up and, when's the next stop off? I need toilet. You know what I mean? And it's like, switching the channel from whatever, sort of some hip hop movie to Coronation Street instantly. So it's kind of, it was quite surreal. But at the end of the day, that's the thing I love about this culture. You've got enough in common with everybody to just get on. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't like I was a fish out of water. We were all kind of on this mission, and we all love this art form, and we all try to excel in this stuff. So there's, it had surreal moments, but very much I was also sort of riding the crest of, doing the battles and with the world titles and everything. So I was just out there to represent really and try and, sort of do my thing. And it was just an amazing adventure.
Were there any kind of unexpected skills or takeaways or learnings you got from any of those guys, or hanging out with them in such an intense period?
It was awesome sort of getting to know Petrix and Dopey better, and meeting so many people on that scene, and kind of getting more sort of familiar with, the turntablist culture out there and stuff like that. And certainly, we were jamming all the time, any sound checks, we were jamming all the time, and just getting insights into, some of their routines. I was watching those guys do their showcases every night, and we'd get granular and geeky about our thinking behind things and how we put things together. So there was all that learning. But also just on the beats thing, this is a time when it was literally when Madlib was writing the album with JD, so most of these journeys in the van, you're talking 8-hour trips across the States. You're basically listening to Dilla beat tapes, so fishing out like the tracks that he likes for, the Champion Sounds album or whatever, and hearing Madlib talk about, sort of his process and stuff like that, or just hitting the record shops with him and stuff. But yeah, from all of the guys, even the way sort of Rome's looked at DJing with a rap crew, and his sort of take on sort of doing cuts for tracks, and even just the business side of things. Do you know what I mean? Just how gigs worked in the States, how sort of, the underground scene works out there so far as gigging and going out there. It was massive. It was wicked.
Amazing. So what was it like coming back? Did you come back to like a load of offers and just was everything simple, or was there a bit of, because obviously you'd left work with that sort of booking in mind. Did you then come back and you were like, oh shit, I've got to find some gigs, or was it just like, yeah, I'm good?
It wasn't. I mean, doing this thing as a full-time profession is never plain sailing. I'd say for maybe 2 years post sort of battle wins, there's a certain amount of gigs that I wouldn't say come automatically. You've still got to kind of put yourself out there. But certainly there was a couple of years where the credentials of being a current world champion or nearly current world champion means that there's certain offers that come in. And it was at a time when there was still a good circuit of hip-hop clubs around the country and around Europe that were looking for, scratch champions to book. The ITF also was particularly big in Europe, Germany in particular. So there was plenty of gigs out there being the ITF world champion. It kind of one thing rolled onto the next. And then, 2 years down the line, quite randomly really, DJ Vadim got in touch, and he was after a new DJ to sort of join the Russian percussion. So that kind of came along, and that ended up being my world for the next 3 or 4 years, touring with those guys, sort of 100 plus shows a year, and that was obviously another incredible opportunity, but an incredible sort of learning process as well. But
how was touring on that level? You've been with your partner a long time, haven't you? If you don't mind me asking that.
Yeah.
How did that impact on home life?
She's always been amazing about it, and to be honest, I think I certainly couldn't tour like that now, being a dad. Certainly in my 20s, it was much easier to do that kind of thing. But you just kind of cherish the time you do have at home, and make time for each other when you are there. You know, it wasn't constant, but certainly after a few years doing that, I can't fathom people who do that kind of touring for decades. You know,
yeah,
it's a big sacrifice. Unless your entire world can be kind of nomadic with you, then it is quite labour intensive and quite sort of mentally and physically draining as well. You know, that much kind of sleep deprivation and travel and kind of lack of regularity, and it's sort of every week's completely different. So yeah, it was great for a period, but for me, not sustainable for a long time.
Yeah, it takes a certain sort of person. Do you think that when you were doing it then there was a bit of like a make hay while the sun shines, and it's like, did you think at the time, well, I know I'm not going to do this forever, so I may as well just get it in whilst I can and whilst I've got the energy?
I didn't really have that kind of wide angle kind of lens on it, to be honest with you. It was kind of a situation of, this is amazing, I'm living the dream. On a Tuesday night, you might be playing in a club in Austria, in a town you've never heard of, to, sort of a really, there might be 50 people in a small basement club on a Tuesday night. But then on the Saturday night, you might be in a good concert venue and have a few hundred people rocking it. It was just always, it's tons of fun. Like, we're probably, one of the most fun live setups I've ever been a part of, because it was very freestyle. There was a very loose structure around it. We knew what songs we'd be doing, but there was enough room to really flex and have fun, and for each performance to be unique and play with the crowd in a different way. And me and Vadim would DJ often before we did the live set, and sometimes after we did the live set. And for the first couple of years, this is pre-Serato, so we were lugging records everywhere, and a certain town in Switzerland likes, the reggae tinged stuff, and the next town might be a funk town. The next town might be a straight up sort of independent backpacky hip hop town. So trying to work with all those different crowds, and it was just tons of fun.
It's great that you got to improvise like that. I mean, I did some scratching for a band for a few years, which I think kind of held me back in a way, because it meant that I didn't take other gigs that could have taken me on a more fun route. But that's my experience specifically. And what I found with that, I was just scratching on a couple of tunes and firing off a few samples. And I kind of struggled with the rigidity of it. And I just thought it must be weird, like when you're a touring band or something and you're doing the exact same thing, like each gig, and you've got your 3 or 5 tunes that you've got to play, or you basically won't make it out of there.
Yeah,
like it must be mad, like having that mindset. It's kind of like going to a factory every day and just putting the same bottle top on.
Yeah, it's I suppose every band has different dynamic. Do you know what I mean? I've done all. quite a few different bands. Used to DJ for Broken English and DJ for Crispy 3, and for a while, sort of when was it, 2007 to 2009, quite randomly, I was essentially a Spanish hip hop DJ.
Yeah.
Off the back of the Vadim stuff and the One Self stuff, the Spanish manager of the tours we did out there had this really big artist called Mala Rodriguez, and all of a sudden she needed a new DJ, so I sort of signed up for that, and that was mental, and that was a completely different dynamic. All of a sudden she was essentially kind of, pop star status over there in sort of in the Spanish speaking world. So all of a sudden it's like much bigger crowds, but obviously, the emphasis is very much on the star, so you are kind of that sort of background guy. So a lot of pressure and a completely different dynamic. And those shows could be pretty different as well. The set list did change around, but like you say, there was definite songs that fans needed to hear, because I think she had a bunch of number ones in Spain and around the Spanish speaking world. So a very different but equally interesting sort of situation and experience.
Are there any sort of cities where you've gigged that they're just really close to your heart, just for the energy or the anything like that, or the venues where someone would go, "Can you come play here?" And just in a heartbeat, you'd be like, "Yep."
Well, I had one recently actually that really made me think in those terms. And there are certain promoters when you've been sort of doing this for so long that are repeat bookings, and sort of they become friends essentially, and two of those off the top of my head are Guernsey and Portrush. Gary and Andre, the promoters out there, I don't know, the scene builders, they've really kind of nurtured a scene and sort of taste makers. They've educated a generation of sort of music lovers in their town, by booking the acts they book and playing the records they play at the nights that they put on. So I love those kind of promoters, those kind of cities where you go and you know it's a community. I used to play for No Faking in Liverpool, and that was the same deal. The No Faking boys, like they, used to book up like quality acts every time, and they've got a home crowd that are just knowledgeable and just love it. You know what I mean? So the place that I've played many times over the years in Portrush in Northern Ireland, it was actually the final gig in that venue. They're closing down after years. I think they've been bought up and it's getting redeveloped and this, that, and the other. But it's where all the sort of grassroots bands play from every genre, punk and whatever. And and I've done some awesome fun gigs there before. So I played that about a month ago with Andy Smith, and it was cracking. So like a bunch of people travelled from here, there, and everywhere to get there for the final one, and just familiar faces like the local DJs and local crew all there, and just like visiting family. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's those kind of places,
Yeah, when you know people are in it for the right reasons as well. It's not just a way to make a bit of profit. They really, really care about the culture and about the community.
Yeah, just real music lovers and people up for a good time, and somewhere you're going to have fun.
Yeah. So, was it around this time that you started developing the Controller One turntable with Vestax?
So that's sort of skipping back to kind of post the battle wins, really. So ever since I won the UK Vestax competition in 2001, I basically had a sponsorship deal with Vestax where they hooked me up with gear, and I think I'd vocalised my sort of interest in product development with the UK team and made them aware that I had ideas on various things. I'd always realised that what we're working with when we're working with the Technics turntable is, we're sort of bastardising that instrument. Like hip hop came from using a piece of gear in a way you're not really supposed to use that gear, which is awesome and what kind of gives it magic. But also this art form was developing in a way that made it necessary that we had tools developed in line with the ideas that we had on how to push this thing. Let's sort of rip up that blueprint and kind of really develop something to make music with turntables. So might have been by the end of 2002, Vestax got in touch and said, look, the guys in the States are also talking about developing a turntable that's more about making music, and it was like D Styles and Ricky Rucker and XS, and do you want to get involved in this thing? So I obviously jumped at it, and they sent me some initial ideas, and it was basically sort of the kind of thing that I'd also kind of dreamed of, So it was kind of a back and forth from then, really. I'd sent him various illustrations. Obviously, being a graphic designer, I could sort of draw up these sort of ideas and stuff. And they'd send back the latest drawings on it. And by, I think it was 2004, they basically booked most of the people who were helping them develop this turntable. They'd booked them for the World Finals in Japan. So we all went to Tokyo and all showcased at the extravaganza that year, and we had like design meetings at the Vestax offices, and so that was sort of all part of the process. And then I think the first finished articles came out 2007, I think, was it? Something like that. And then all the sort of key players in that kind of got sent one.
How did you find it? Because I think it's fair to say it was an amazing idea. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's rather than having a pitch control that's expressed in percentages, you've got musical intervals of semitones as keys around the turntable. Yeah. And like, I wonder with it was expensive to start with, but I would wonder with it, going back to what you said about hip hop being about bastardizing and kind of using things in ways they're not supposed to be used. I almost wonder if it gave DJs too much structure.
I think so. I mean, it was a strange process, to be honest with you, because it's like that old adage, careful what you wish for, sort of thing. Because we did have all these ideas, because obviously we wanted to create more advanced sort of music. We wanted to advance our music making on turntables. So we just threw all the ideas at the wall, and the finished product was what was made. It wasn't a commercial success. It was kind of a niche within a niche within a niche.
Yeah.
Particular at the time, because essentially outside of the people directly involved in developing this thing, there wasn't a great deal of other turntablists really trying to do that. You could mention a few names, but really, you're talking maybe 30 people in the world really trying to make turntable music, like probably then really actually following it through and doing stuff with it. So, which is obviously not a big enough market to, sort of mass sell a product.
I suppose it crossed over timeline a bit, correct me if I'm wrong on this, with the era of custom records being used for battling and stuff like that as well.
It did. I mean, it came out basically when that was coming to a fore within the battle scene. But I think, like you say, about the sort of the experience of using it and the experience of seeing it performed with, I remember my thinking was, as soon as I got this thing, I really want to do a solo that everybody knows the solo, everybody knows pitch-wise what's supposed to be achieved. But obviously, because you can only play one note at a time on the turntable, it's got to be like a monophonic solo, so something without chords and whatnot, So I thought of the Light My Fire Doors solo, which is a monophonic solo. I actually taught myself to read music for the first time just to play that thing. And it was really hard to achieve, to be honest with you. It didn't take that long to figure out, but actually to perform, it was like I'd have figured it out on a keyboard like in sort of a third of the time, because you've got all the notes right there. With the controller one, I had to sort of switch the buttons up and down octaves and use a little toggle to go between semitones, which weren't available to me on the buttons and stuff. So it was really quite fiddly. But musically, I was pretty chuffed because I got it all note for note. And then I showed it to my mates. I'm like, check this out. Dead excited, like, because I've got this new toy that's like going to change the world. And yeah. And thankfully, I've got really honest mates who don't blow steam at me. But they're like, yeah, it's all right, that Woody, but I prefer your other stuff, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, right, I kind of get it, because the way I was playing it at that point, I wasn't playing it like the best ever turntable ever made. I was playing it like a really awkward keyboard. Do you know what I mean? So over the course of the following years, I kind of learn, because it's a new instrument essentially. It's a turntable, but it's not. It's a new thing. And I think that's why there's been people get them but not use them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And amazingly skilled people have these things who I've never seen them perform with it. And I think part of that is because you've almost got to create a new way to play on the thing.
Yeah.
You got to create your own way to play on it because nobody's had them before. And, you know, so you either take influence off the people who have already played, or you figure your own way out. So there was definitely a process that took a couple of years. In fact, to be honest with you, mine was in the flight case for a good while because I kind of got slightly disillusioned with it because I was like, oh, is this the thing that I wanted, you know? Over time, I figured out a way to use it in the way I like to manipulate turntables, but the technology wasn't dictating my creativity, it was assisting it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So all of a sudden I could work with the sample in the way I wanted to, but repitch it at any point, you know what I mean? And so that's when it started becoming really interesting for me, rather than it being a cack-handed piano, like just being an awesome turntable.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Those two totally different ways that you can look at something like that. It can give you like a million possibilities, or it can really like limit you to doing something very rigid. It's like I knew a little bit of music theory, and I'd have known either loads or none at all because of the way I do things musically. I don't do anything original. I just kind of take from these little bits that I know, and it limits me. Whereas I see other people that they don't have these boundaries, and they just come up with some really creative stuff.
I think that's the way I kind of see. Obviously, tech companies are incentivized to bring new singing and dancing things out every 2 minutes, and obviously it fits their business model. But I try not to immerse myself in every new feature going because. Yeah, it can be good. It can open up things that sort of a new ideas, but I don't like the idea of a tech company dictating where my creativity goes.
Yeah,
I'm of the school of limitations bring outside of the box creativity. That sort of interests me and excites me kind of a bit more than boggling my brain with tech, really.
Yeah, you look at what was made on SP1200s and 404s and things like that musically. You know, you don't need to have a load of tech. I've led you down that path again, haven't I?
All good, it's all good.
Just gone deep. So just going back to the timeline then, coming back to where we'd left off after the tour, that was then when you started doing the turntables in Technicolor, wasn't it? And you did the AV.
Yeah, so I finished working with Milo Rodriguez, doing all that touring, and then I'd always been interested in the AV stuff ever since the DVDJs came out, but I just felt at the time, being that my career had come off the back of being sort of a turntablist champion and this, that, and the other, and the fact that I just loved working with turntables, I didn't pick it up when it was still on the DVDs. As soon as Serato announced that they were bringing a video feature in that you could use Serato with, I was like, right, brilliant, I can get on this. So then I set to work trying to do my thing with that, really. And that's gone down various paths. Like you said, the first one was Turntables in Technicolor, which was nearly all kind of original sort of animations that I did, really. Pretty techie. It was pretty bonkers. It was kind of like learning to DJ again, because all of a sudden you're working out in real time as you're doing these performances. You're figuring out what works visually with the crowd as well as sonically, you know. So so awesome experience. But
were you doing it all in After Effects?
Yeah, largely. Yeah, I'm not like the world's most advanced animator by any means. I'm not so bad at sort of getting something down that looks okay, but a lot of the animations were pretty simple, but I wanted things that you could tell the interaction between the turntables and the movement. So a lot of the time it's quite simple movements. So it was a case of just trying to make things that looked good, that could illustrate that sort of interaction, really. But Illustrator, Photoshop, but then After Effects for the most part for all the animations.
Yeah, it must have been nice being able to bring your passion for visual together with the passion for the music as well.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that those two things would interact in that way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, you can design your own mixtape covers, you can design your own record sleeves, but to actually DJ with your own visuals, that, certainly never saw that coming 20 years previous or whatever.
Yeah. So did you do a lot of touring with that and with the hip hop anniversary show?
Yeah, well, the anniversary show was a few years after that, but I've been all around the world with that stuff. I got to showcase World DMC in 2011, I think, was it, or 2010, with Turntables and Technicolor, and then the US chapter asked me to New York to showcase the US DMC finals, I think the year later, doing the visual stuff. And yeah, sort of things like Hip Hop Camp in Czech Republic and all kinds of stuff. But it was also actually, even though all of the sort of evidence of Turntables in Technicolor online are the showcase versions, which are anything from 15 minutes to 20 minutes long, it was actually a full hour kind of club show as well. So I ended up doing a load of club bookings with it as well.
How long did that take you to put together?
Oh, the first show was hardcore. Like I say, it was, I don't know, like at least 6 months working at it like a full-time job, essentially. It was hardcore. I actually tried to apply for funding because I thought, you know what, if at all I can just get my head down and not have to tour and not have to do anything and sort of have some kind of research and development sort of fund or something, and that'd be great. But yeah, I just sort of went into brick walls with that one. So it was all kind of in between doing gigs and all that. But yeah, it took a long time. But one of the things I learned from Turntables in Technicolor, even though I was really pleased with it artistically, and it was kind of, I wanted to put my own stamp on this audio-visual scratching thing, because obviously Yoda had been doing that for a few years, and Mike Realm had been doing that for a few years on the DVDJs, and what they did was awesome. But if I'm going to come out doing this, it needs to be a bit different. It needs to be my, sort of put my stamp on it, really. So that's kind of why I really wanted to sort of delve into my skill set as a graphic designer, because that was my sort of USP in that field, if you will.
Yeah.
That said, I kind of learned a lot about, like I say, what works with the crowd, because what I learned was that even if I've laboured over this animation and this graphic for like a month solid for this like 5-minute piece, they don't have to give a crap about this animation. They see animations all the time. It doesn't matter what people react to. And it's the same with music, is a bit of familiarity, so that's kind of, a video clip from here, a cheeky graphic that references this pop culture reference over here and stuff like that. So yeah, I sort of brought that kind of learning into the subsequent sets that I did. So I did one called Big Fat 90s, which was like an ode to like MTV raps of the 90s with a few pop culture references in there. And then sort of a year or so later, it was the 40th anniversary of hip hop. So I kind of focused more on hip hop in particular, and did like a sort of a potted chronology. Sort of obviously had to be quite select and sort of curate it sort of so it worked as a club set and whatnot. But that's kind of what followed that. But yeah, man. But yeah, still doing it. Still, I'm going to update that one for the 50th anniversary and do a few shows with that. But I've done a bunch of gigs in recent years for the Hacienda brand. Well, I say brand, but the Hacienda nightclub.
Yeah.
Warming up for Hacienda classical shows and all this lot. So I've done like AV sets for them, which are sort of themed around that kind of vibe, and yeah, various kind of commissions that I've had over the years. So yeah, still actively involved in the audiovisual stuff.
Yeah, and what we've not touched on yet either is your own music as well, and your stuff with Boca 45.
Yeah, so yeah, I've always made music from getting 2 tape recorders and doing the old stop tapes and all that lot when I was a kid. And I probably got an Akai sampler about the same time as I got my first turntables, sort of 92-ish, on HP from Dawson's for the next 6 years or whatever. So I've always wanted to make music. It's just always kind of been in the background, really.
Yeah.
I think the thing about beat making for me is I've always been cautious to put things out there, and I've never been quite sure whether things are any good or not. Whereas with scratching, it's quite tangible. You know, you can see somebody perform something and think, can I do that? Yes, I can do that. Tick, you know, so I must be at a certain level because I can do X, Y, and Z. And obviously, you know, a final performance is very subjective still, but skill set wise, you can kind of fathom where you're at. Whereas with beat making and music making generally, it's so subjective, you know. So it took me a long time to figure out if I had the confidence to like let anybody listen to my stuff, to be honest with you. And it took me right till about 2015 to finally be like, you know what, all these sketches, all these millions of ideas I've had over the years, let's actually just knuckle down, concentrate, figure out what you want to do and finish stuff, you know. It's that age old, you know, finish it, you know. So that's what I set about to do. And end result of that was my album, A Point of Contact, which came out in 2016. And we did a few shows with that. The live show version and was with Carl Sharrocks, who I met through the pork scratching nights that I mentioned in the late 90s. So we've been mates ever since and made bits of music in between. So he sort of contributed to a bunch of those tracks. So he was part of the live setup, as well as Christian Madden, who I've also known since I was about 12 or 13 as a little skate urchin knocking about Burnley. He was... he knew all the skaters back then. Anyway, he went on to be an amazing keys player who played on a bunch of the tracks on Point of Contact. And he was our keys player up until the point that Liam Gallagher nicked him.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable, Liam. But yeah, obviously don't blame him for taking the gig. But,
it's probably all right.
Yeah, a bit better than playing to a few scratch nerds. But yeah, man. But those guys are wicked, and also Christian played a few keys for us on the stuff I did with Boca 45. So yeah, the project with me and Boca, we ended up calling Boca Woody. Really creative, but yeah, we just really got on. It was like proper chance meeting. We didn't know each other. We knew about a million people in common. But we just got chatting at an airport in Romania.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. I think we'd sniffed each other out as the only other English people in the airport and got a chatting. And I'm like, oh, those records? And he's like, yeah, those records. And I'm like, what, you know, what do you play? And he's like, you know, a bit of funk, a bit of hip hop. I'm like, oh, that's what I play. What's your name? Oh, Boca 45. Oh, you know. And really randomly, even though we were booked by different promoters for different gigs, I think for the next 2 or 3 flights, our seats were actually together. Like our allotted seats were actually together for the next couple of flights.
Oh, nice.
Properly like weird. So it was a bit of a Twilight Zone thing, really. And so we were chatting for the next few hours, realised we really got on, and because of the strangeness of that seating situation, was like, we should do something, I think. So the Boca Woody kind of came from that, really. That was that. So Brilliant. We put an EP out and we put an LP out, and there's a few little sketches knocking about currently as well. So,
oh, nice. And you've got the label doing the scratch tools as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So once I'd figured out how to release wax and stuff via the Point of Contact album, I'd always wanted to do scratch records anyway. I actually had one on the computer from like 2004 that I never put out because Serato came along and made that whole idea seem unviable at the time. So what I did with my first album, Point of Contact, was it was a double album gatefold. So one of the records was the album and the other record was essentially a battle tool using a lot of the musical samples that we had in the record. So yeah, from that it was kind of a stepping stone to doing more scratch records. So yeah, from kind of more like library record, sort of instrumental type of musically themed ones to sort of more kind of traditional sample stuff. I've been putting those out since then, really, on woodwork. Done some collaborations with different DJs. So we've had DJ Robert Smith, Drop 2. Christian Jurstad, who's an amazing turntablist from Manchester, who's also a wizard on the Controller One. Check him out if you've not heard of him, because he's like massively talented and possibly not the most well known. So yeah, Christian Jurstad, I put out a great record that he did called Tones, which is really awesome for any kind of pitching sort of stuff on the turntable. Just released 2 records by JFB, so those are sort of flying out the door at the minute. Did a record with DJ Mike from Italy, really talented turntablist. Yeah, the guests are kind of quite select, and it's mainly a sort of a springboard for my stuff, but I like to sort of work with my friends and people who I really dig as well. So,
but it's an important part of being that kind of pillar of the community as well. I think if you can show it's not just about you, I think there's a huge benefit in that for everyone.
Yeah, no, and I just love kind of whether it's my record or somebody else's. I love the sort of cottage industry sort of vibe. It's basically me in this room, doing everything, sort of packing it up, chatting to shops, doing the orders, doing the graphic design for the most part. And, it's great to make things that I'd want as a punter, sort of make products that, are great to use, great to listen to, tools for the art form and look good,
So the other thing that I'd like to talk to you about is you're living a pretty clean life these days, and that I'm not saying that from a view of knowing how hedonistic you have or haven't ever been, but you're vegan, you're running marathons, or you've just done your first marathon, you're really into your kind of mindfulness and your yoga. Has that been a journey, or was it one catalyst where you were like, I know I'm getting older? Because this is something on the podcast I want to explore, is age, because we are all getting older all the time, and you do have to take care of yourself and think about yourself in different ways, and even like DJing gives you a bit more backache than it used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was never too hedonistic, to be honest with you. I've never been a big drinker or anything like that. So far as all the veganism and the mindfulness and sort of giving up sort of drinking and stuff like that. Yeah, I hate to use the word journey, but yeah, it's been one. Bit of a long story, but essentially possibly related to DJing. Around 2008, I started getting ill quite often, and the first bout of it was actually on my return from a trip to Mexico. Whether it was food poisoning, I did eat some sort of pre-veganism. I did eat some fish out there, and I got really, really quite ill. I ended up in hospital with it. In subsequent years after that, these bouts of illness kept coming back, and they kept plying me with antibiotics and this, that, and the other. But the doctors really didn't have any kind of answers for us. They were sending us to every kind of test you can imagine, and as you can imagine, it was quite stressful. So for years, so I was still touring, still doing all the stuff, but ill quite a lot of the time. And then sort of 2013, after nearly 4+ years of that, I was basically feeling ill all the time, and they couldn't figure it out. And just to kind of try and alleviate the stress of that, essentially, I sort of come across meditation. My cousin was a meditation teacher, and it was quite a random book buy, actually, that sent me down that direction as well. I bought a book by a guy called Alan Watts. I think I'd heard a speech by him. And he was one of the big sort of Western exponents of Eastern philosophy and stuff. And, he sort of used to talk about Buddhism and whatnot in the 60s. This English guy who ended up teaching at Berkeley and stuff. And really interesting guy, great speaker. And I think I'd heard a speech by him, and it was pretty inspiring stuff, And so I went and bought a book by him, sort of before the illness kind of took up a notch. And I only got to reading it once, like the shit had hit the fan, really, and it was so useful. It sort of blew my mind, really, because a lot of these concepts were sort of initially hard to get your head around, but you're just like, man, this is just like literally common sense. Like, how have I never heard anybody speak about this stuff before? He mentioned meditation and stuff. So I started meditating as a way to sort of alleviate from the stress of this sort of health situation that was going down. And through that, through sort of getting to know the way sort of my mind worked, essentially you're sitting there looking at your mind, and after a while, after sort of regular practice, you get more familiar with your thoughts and how they relate to bodily sensations and stuff like that. And through this process, whilst the doctors weren't able to tell me anything about what was going on with me, I realised that actually my thoughts had a part to play in these physical symptoms. So I essentially self-diagnosed sort of anxiety. And whether it was the physical illnesses that had triggered that, that was why I was feeling ill. Like most days, was the anxiety part of it. As it happened, the sort of more physical things kind of dissipated and went. But through kind of mindfulness and, I ended up sort of going down a route of sort of really researching a lot of these Western philosophies and got quite into Buddhism and stuff. So, yeah, sort of Buddhism and mindfulness have really helped me sort my head out, really. And, just been massively sort of therapeutic in that respect. So the veganism part of it came through thinking about the backstory of a lot of things, sort of more deeply kind of looking at my ideas around ethics and also my ability to have agency in how I act and the way I live my life. And, so through that, I realised that, well, ethically, I should be vegan because, the sort of animal suffering and whatnot. So that's kind of where that came from, and just following through with it. And then the same with the alcohol and stuff, I sort of realised that my optimal way to live was with clarity and with focus. So the alcohol was another part of that, really. If I could have a clear mind and do stuff to sort of ensure that, then why do I need alcohol or anything like that sort of clouding my judgment on stuff? So knocked that on the head, and I don't know, it's been an interesting sort of rewarding sort of personal journey, really. But got into running a while ago. That was a lockdown thing. That was it's just good to be active and just good to sort of investigate these new kind of things. I don't know. This is just too much in life to sort of get into and enjoy, really. So
just before you go, there's just one more thing I'd like to ask, and apologies if this puts you on the spot, but what I was thinking it'd be nice to do is just ask any of the guests if they could hear anyone else on this podcast do this sort of exploration of their DJ career and or everything afterwards. Is there anyone particular that springs to mind?
DJ XL from Wales would be great.
All right.
He
won the 98, didn't he?
Did he win the 98?
I think 98 UK, because it was the first video that I saw.
Yeah, he was always in the top lot. But for me, he's within, definitely top tier UK innovators on the turntables. He essentially changed the course of scratching. Famously, he showed Qbert the twiddle, and Qbert went on to do the crab. Changed the course of the sound of scratching, and he's from Wales. Do you know what I mean? Every time I saw him in a DMC competition, I was blown away with the creativity. Really inspirational, and sort of people need to know more about him. So that'd be a great one.
Definitely. Well, I mean, it's been amazing to share all that with you, and I think this is going to turn out a long edit, but I think that there's a load of fascinating stuff in here about your approaches to all sorts of stuff in life. I think about your approaches to creativity, longevity, introspection. I think it's a big thing. I think that's why this is a long one, because there's a lot of introspection in it, as well as just a lot of stuff that you've done. So I just want to really thank you for your time today and the other day, and it's been a really, really interesting conversation, and I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, dude.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Once a DJ. If you'd like to support the show, then head to onceadj.com/support to find out how you can help. If you'd like to get in touch with any feedback or suggestions, email onceadjpodcast@gmail.com. Once a DJ is produced by the good people at Remote Control. If you'd like to find out more about working with them, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk.